Hi and welcome back. This is Kelly Borsheim at Borsheim Art Studio, borsheimarts.com, and Patreon. This is Lollipop, and I'm going to continue with the figure. I was trying to think overnight, what bothered me most is, should I fix what really bothers me on the figure while I still have the paint on the palette, or should I go ahead and fill in all of these leaves so that I start having the color relationships and can be thinking about those as I'm progressing along. I decided in this case, especially because this flake white replacement that I'm using is kind of a sticky thing, that I thought I might as well use the paint that I have here. Plus, I don't necessarily want these places that I really don't like to dry like that. And so I'm going to continue with the painting here, okay? So first, this is bothering me and this is bothering me. So I want to get the transition a little bit. I decided that what I want to do is fatten up this leg, because the tricky thing with youth is you want to have enough, you need to have enough roundness to show that it's a youth. But at the same time, if you exaggerate it, then it just looks fat and pudgy, and sometimes it doesn't actually follow the anatomy. So it's not always a good thing. So I want to get the feeling of the young and the soft flesh, and like I said before, pressing against the rock. Although this part I'll develop later as we go on. I'll certainly probably do this. I'm going to stop talking and start painting. And please, if you have questions, please put them down at the video or contact me in any way possible that I can maybe answer here. And let's see if we can do something together. We'll improve our work. Thank you. Okay. All right. The transitions, I find, are often quite interesting, and this goes kind of light into here. The process that I actually learned was do your design in dark and add the lights, leaving this space between the light and dark later. Then come in, do the transitional molds of your design of your dark shape, and then work the variation of the dark. Fall of light means this is closer to the light source, and so as you vertically go down, things are going to have to get darker because they're physically distant from the light source. And then you start working in all of the little details of the lights. So that turns out to be the last thing to do. However, I don't know. I just like doing what I do, and that's not always a smart thing, but I bounce around a lot to keep my interest, I think. So I'm going to push out his belly a little bit here and make it just go in front of this elbow. And so I'm changing this, but at least I don't want all three. I don't want the leg, I don't want the elbow point, and I don't want the line of the belly to all meet at the same spot, because it stops the energy. And so I decided that it doesn't matter how I do that as long as I do it so that they're different. And yet it has to work, obviously, with the anatomy. Okay, so I'm adding in some darks here because I tend to do the light and I don't do the tonal transitions into things. And also this shadow is going to pull down here with a little bit. Need a little bit more dark on there. So, and it gets lighter as I go along. Now, because I used a dark color, this is coming out too brown. Do you know why? Because I was darkening this, and so I put the burnt umber into the mixture. The problem is that this is actually a shadow falling on a light. So the burnt umber in there really deadens the color, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep it pretty and warm. And because also as the belly is turning around toward the front and actually facing the light, the shadow is going to get lighter here, but it's also going to have that warm color, more of that warm color bounced into that. So it's important in that reason to understand the form of things and the directions that things are going. So, okay. I don't want to lose this light here of the rib cage. And again, I'll develop the detail of the undulating, the shadows, the subtle shadows of the ribs. A lot of times people do this too contrasty, and it makes me hurt because it makes me think of a person who's malnourished. It's fine if the pose is stretching and you're moving, of course, because that you will show your ribs when you extend your body like that. But he's just resting, and that's not going to expose rib unless he's just really malnourished. So, however, I do want to keep the overall. Oops. Un attimo! Too much spirits going into that. It glides easily, but it's just going to be thin paint. So I don't want to do that. Do I like that? Actually, let me go check, because I took out some of the bend that I was telling you was necessary. So I think what is I think I like this roundness, and then this needs to come up more at an angle with the cheeks, and that'll give the impression of the soft flesh, and then put the shadow in there. I think it's more shaping of the hip, perhaps, than it was the lower leg, because I'm starting to like this a little bit better now. Although I want to put a little bit of curve into the rectus femoris and maybe remove some of this with some background. But I think I like this shape a little better. But I can already see that there's a transparency going on there. So I want to mix this with a little bit more white, because that'll lend the opacity factor. That's interesting that it doesn't, I haven't got it on the tip of the brush, I got it on the... And this is more of what the classics like to teach you, is to do this solid color first, and then later on your second round of painting you would go in and start getting the specific details in of the roundness of the light and the roundness of the form. I find that a little bit too paint by number for me, and I like this random sort of thing. It's sort of like I'm trying to follow a system, but I don't quite get it, is what I think it seems like, but I don't know. I like doing it the way I want to do it. And I would also like to start changing this a little bit so that I work with reflected lights. This should be a little bit grayer back in the reflected shadows here because of the rock bouncing in, and the same for this. This light that's over here, and I'm actually going to widen this, but the light that's on this side is a bluer light because of the reflected, the same way that the water has a green tint to it because it's reflecting the trees that are nearby. So I can put that a wee bit lighter as I go up into the cylinder. And actually on the original you can see there's a little bit of light under there, but again, I need to be careful that I don't go back to what I was doing before and put in this blotchy sort of thing. I don't want to do that either. But okay, so all right, keep that. It's interesting having the bounce light because you still need to have the form looking three-dimensional, and to do that you need a major light source and then a minor light source is fine. So the main light source is still going to be the strong sunlight coming here. The bounce light is going to be the minor. So in effect, my tube, my cylinder here, is lit primarily here. All the rest of this has to go darker, lighter, 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 lighter. Then the reflected light will bounce in, but the reflected light has to be within a context. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So yeah, let me be careful. And even this, I put a little bit too much dark into that. I need this dark should not really be equal to this. So, okay. All right, I want to get this to a point where I'm happy with it and I can let it dry and then come in and work it again. So, yeah. So you might be able to guess with what I've told you about my mental process that doing the bozetto and the whole color studies, I know that it works, and I know it's a smart way for people to be organized in their creativity and make a plan, but I don't want to do it. I'd rather do it here, which just doesn't make sense really, but it's who I am, and I don't know. I don't want to do things so many times because one of the problems I have finishing projects, whether sculpture or painting, is that when I get really close to the end, mentally, my brain is ahead of the process physically, and so mentally, my brain has already moved on to something next. So I always have to end up playing a game with myself to say, all right, finish the tediousness of bringing this artwork to where my brain sees it done. And I got hair stuck in there and I'm trying to get it out and it just doesn't want to come off, but I want to. So yeah, to get the physicality caught up with what's in my head so that I can move on. So I end up playing little games with myself and say, all right, continue to work on the necessary things to finish an artwork. But in the meantime, maybe do that 2 hours a day. And then you can treat yourself to doing the new stuff. Because frankly, the new stuff is more fun because you go from a blank thing and then quickly you have something. This piece right here, it's obviously not done, but it's something. And right now it's in the middle stage where it's still a lot of fun to work on it. But then when I get towards the end, my brain's already into the next thing. But the ending goes very slow. You'll find in this video, if I keep doing it all the way to the end, that I may be working on a whole hand. You're going to have a whole video on a whole hand. You're going to be, do I watch the paint dry? If you are, tell me, and I can just skip through those things and do still lifes and put them all in. Boom, boom, boom. You see the different things. That may be the way to go because I don't know if the actual every step of the way doing is important or if that's the thing that's lacking in stuff. But you know, I'm kind of the camp that if you can understand a lot of the ideas, your best bet is to start trying it out yourself and actually doing things. I don't think there's much cure to, you know, unless it's just fun like watching a regular movie. That I don't know. Alright, so that's my dark brush. I'm going to go back to my lighter brush and pull this out. I don't want it too light, so put that into my base color again so I don't have a pure white. Ah, good griefus amesis. Okay, does the rest bother me so much? This can go a wee bit darker in here. That means I need the dark brush. These are small areas that I don't worry about too much, but another part of me thinks, well, why not just do it while you're here? Okay, and knock that down a little bit there. It's too white sticking out. Okay, so we go a little bit darker for the behind the sternomastoid. I'm so bad with labels. I don't know why my brain resists wanting to name things, but it's helpful to communicate, isn't it? Oh, alright, I don't like this big dark spot sitting here. So I'm just going to put the whole thing over all light. Later I'll come in. I think this is also too dark. So, but it's, maybe this would be a little better. I don't want to roll it into the lights again. I want it to turn around, but it's not going to turn around that fast. And also there's the part inside there that seems to be. Okay, that's a little bit better. Maybe I'll pull some of this in here with some of the lighter. This kind of dark. I've got enough of this happening that I think I'm okay with this for now. And then this I'll actually look at. The lines here are soft. I'll be developing those, and also this. And maybe this needs a little bit of softness here. I don't like that little thin area that was there. So I can tell with my rubbing, it's not blending in with the darks. That means that the wood really sucked it up overnight, which is fine. It's always an interesting play of the game, whether you want the oil paint to be dry or whether you want it to be wet. And you do different tasks based on, or you work with it wet or dry based on what it is you're trying to accomplish. Okay, and again, I'll be working that over like everything. All right, I don't like this standing out. That's okay. These are small potato things. It's just mostly it was this glaring thing. Goodness, what have I done there? La la la. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Allora. Now I'm going to take my fan brush. Goodness, 14 minutes. All right, I want to take my fan brush and do a little blending. When I start with the blending, I was taught you're only supposed to do the fan brush on the darks because you want the lights to sing and you put in all these brush strokes. But I'm early in the game and I don't want any brush stroke going in the direction I didn't want it to go in just because I'm trying to cover real estate. So I'm going to take all of this texture down again, and I usually want to start with the lights because even though sometimes it's hard to keep your darks dark, it is really difficult once you've muddied your lights to keep them light. So I try to, when the brush is clean, I try to, see, that was yesterday's thing, so it's kind of already, I want to start with the light paints on the brush because I feel like, also because I decided I sort of wanted a higher key painting that I'm normally doing. I want to sort of make this, I can work about getting my darks back if I need to, or how it goes. See, these things that I did yesterday, I should have fan brushed it, but I wanted to go carve stone while I had time, and then my main interest is to get the strokes going vertically because I don't really want this attitude of glare when I'm looking at the painting. It's strange because I suppose you could use a matte varnish at the end of it, but sometimes the matte varnishes don't really look all that good either. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go up and down with this. I really like this brush more than I like some of my fan brushes, and I'll tell you why. It's weird because a brush that you use for something like this, during your painting session, never ever rinse it out. Just wipe it off the best you can on a dry paper towel, because if it gets liquid in it, it's no good for the rest of your evening. So I tend to just clean it off the best I can and then keep going with the stuff. At the end of the night, I'll wash it so that the next morning it is dry by then, and then it can actually work. And then, of course, I puff it up and stuff. Sometimes with the fan brushes, I find that they get stuck like this, and they don't get soft again after I've washed them. So I don't like them after the very first time I bought them out of the store. So it really depends on what brand you get. So again, this doesn't have the shape of a fan brush, but it does have the softness of it. And I find that it's really good for blending. So, yeah, use what works for you. But do note that you want to keep this dry. It works because it's dry, and it works because it's soft, and it works because there's no separation in here. And that's what you want when you're trying to blend things together. So yeah, I should have done this last night. These are kind of hardened up now. And it's not the end of the world, any of this, but the other thing is I'm seeing glare on this painting from where I'm looking, and that suggests to me that there's already plenty of oil in these paints without having to add anything, because there shouldn't be anything going on there. Unless, of course, there's something in these mineral spirits that I don't know that's giving this effect, because I'm using a mineral, it's kind of weird, I'm using a mineral spirits that I bought that says it's odorless. And it has the raunchiest smell ever. And don't really like that in my bedroom, frankly. But I started here, and I wanted to be consistent on the lighting for you guys. So as much as possible. But I see there's glare even in the darks and stuff that I do. So it's probably not these paint tubes. It's probably something about this odorless that's putting this in there. And I'm a little bit freaked out by that. But because that's just not normal. There is that trick they say, if something's got too much oil on it, you can take a raw potato, slice it so that you have a naked face to it, and rub the potato in there, and that starchiness will absorb the oils. I don't know if that is what's causing this or not, but maybe that's something you do after it dries, because I can't imagine sticking a potato in and having it destroy all the stuff you just worked to do. So you probably come in after there's some drying happen, maybe the day after or something, and wipe it down. Alright, so let's see. Obviously he's not done, and he's got a lot of work to do, but I think what I would like now, I was thinking during the night that if the shoulder comes down here, it needs to be tapering down to the elbow. Plus, this is too much of a skinny arm, and it looks like it's going into the body this way. So the arm is not going to be a straight thing. So I decided that I don't want to move this closer to the body, but if I move the highlight up into this area and connect it visually up here, it's not going to take a lot, you see? But I want this arm to taper to the elbow, and then the elbow comes out here as it's sort of doing, and then it can do the nice round curve of the belly of the muscle there, thinning down into the wrist. So before I leave the figure part, let me go ahead and add that in. All right, set that aside. All right, so this is going to be a light, but it actually will be a bluer light, but right now I'm not going to deal with the color. I just want to get the tone where I'm happy with it. So I think this was ending right about here, and put this in, tapering down into the elbow. So you see I'm actually coming into this shape here, widening it more at the top, and not making it too wide, because I mean this arm is closer to us and it's fatter, but I also, his body is twisted. There's not so much distance in that could be, there's so much muscle that's hidden in the back behind that plant that I want to make sure that I give him this arm that looks like it would fit with that arm. So I'm going to add a little bit. See, this red, I really screwed that up because this is a sticky mess now. And that's really distracting when I'm trying to paint, because I want my hands not to be sticky, even though, you know, well, and I certainly don't want to take this melted red plastic or whatever it is and have it on my fingers, and then when I do my finger painting, I end up putting this junk into my painting. So that was just not my smartest move ever. Too much, when you think about too many things at once, sometimes it's difficult to remember to keep it going. Okay, so then we go up at this angle for the, now note the bend in the elbow is below this little punch here. So I'm going to go, all right, there's my upwards angle, and I'm going to come back down. And I'm exaggerating again, because I also know I'm going to come back in with the background and paint it in this way to get some of that stuff in. But right now I want to get rid of, and then it goes all the way down. It gets thinner, it's thicker up here, but then as the arm changes direction, that light gets really, really just a subtle kind of edging on the hand, and then here in the fatty part of the palm, it widens up a bit because there's more substance, more roundness that's hitting it. And then the pinky, of course, is getting a different angle going up like that. So yeah, I feel like his hand is a little bit thin. It doesn't feel like a baby fat hand. So let's look at my reference here. It's not much of a change of an angle here, and I don't really see that, but it could be that maybe this goes into the thumb, because if you think about this here, your thumb is going to be closer. I don't have the whole palm painted in there, but this comes out quite a bit from the wrist, but also you're not going to have an abrupt change on the wrist like that necessarily. So all right, I'm going to leave this side as it is for now, although I want to put in another mid-tone to keep this transition going softer. Do you see how that makes it already better? Is put in that third tone in between them, and it kind of does this where it goes in here and then the light comes in on the other side. So again, you don't just have a straight line going down, you break it up a little bit as you get some folds of flesh into the elbow. Because as the elbow is extended, you're going to get little wrinkles and stuff there of the skin, because obviously your skin is going to be enough material so that when you bend your arm, you still have skin on the elbow. That's kind of a weird topic, isn't it? The paint on this rock is still a little bit sticky, so it's funny that I'm resting my pinky there, but I'm aware that I'm putting my pinky into silver. I'm not silver, but into cool tones, so I want to keep that from not touching something else that I didn't want to have that in. So softening this line here with this third tone, I kind of enjoy that. Again, I'll be reworking a lot of this stuff, so it's just building it up and going. I think I may want to pull a wee bit of, because again, I've got this enlarged, so I've got to remember the stuff I see in a tiny reference picture has to be a little bit different in size here. There's that clock. Goodness. But it doesn't go into the arm that much. So knock it back down. And then soften these. So yeah. Okay. This is not really hard, but it's such a narrow space. I think I'm going to leave it because, again, it's nice to have the parts dried as you go in to make the more refined changes, because you don't have that fear of losing things so much if you know that underneath it all your drawing is going to be fairly tight and strong. Alright, so put in a little bit of lighter tone to that. Okay, keep things moving on there. Alright, so let's put some warmth into this. I think it pulled in some of the hair color. After this, I'm going to work on the foliage because I really like to bring the whole painting together all at once. I find that it's not only important for you to be able to make your relationships because you see all the relative parts, but also to realize that if you want to stay looser and you brought everything up to this level, either the bus can hit you or you can decide, oh, I really like this. I can see right now that this is too light in here, but I'm going to let that dry as it is. It doesn't bother me at least as much as it did before. Anyway, so you can stop here and say, oh, I really like this kind of chunky texture here. But if you develop one thing all the way to the completion of hyperrealism, for example, doesn't need to be that exaggerated, but you would be obligated to bring the rest of it to match up with that. Either hyperrealism or going out. As you go out, you would have to get a little less, a little less, a little less, and then totally abstract. But the point is you make a commitment, and maybe it's before you're ready to make that commitment. Whereas if you brought everything up to the certain level, you can leave it, or you can then stand back and say, I really like the looseness of this as it is, and now I want to develop just this. And then you can judge again, but you don't want to have this empty stuff standing here, so beat that horse to death, right? Thank you.